I see on the show this morning you have Governor Healy talking about ICE doing enforcement operations at a church. False. Didn't happen.
They were parked there. They did not do an operation there. She said they were parked in a public space legally.
But to say that and to push that out there puts fear in the immigrant community. So let me tell you what's happening.
That puts fear in the community. Right. To park the ICE agent's vehicle
they're on a
near
public
a church.
street.
They're on a public street.
She said they're on a public street,
sir.
waiting to respond to a criminal alien release pulled aside the road. Let me tell you, in the last couple of days, what's happened in Boston. They've arrested Victor Gomez Perez, a 33-year-old criminal alien from Guatemala, with charges of aggravated rape, assault and battery with dangerous weapon, indecent assault and battery on a victim 14 years or younger. They arrested Kaylee Espinosa, a 33-year-old criminal alien from Colombia, with charges of aggravated assault on a pregnant victim. They arrested Joshua Gonzalez, a 24-year-old criminal alien from Dominican Republic, with charges for trafficking heroin, morphine, opium, resisting police, disorderly conduct, and drug distribution. They also arrested Samuel Armando Barrera, a 20-year-old criminal illegal alien from Guatemala, pending charges for assault and battery on a child.
All right, guys. Well, this morning, the boarders are Tom Homan appeared on MSNBC. So you already know that's going to be entertaining enough. But I found it to be really interesting how this debate perfectly summarizes what it's like to speak to Democrats on this deportation issue. As you'll see in a second, Mika Brzezinski of Morning Joe raises a couple of early objections. Right off the gate, she says, oh, well, a lot of the people you're arresting don't have criminal histories. To which the very obvious contention with that is it is a crime to illegally enter the United States. It's also a crime to illegally stay in the United States. And both of those offenses are subject to deportation. This is not hard. This is not complicated. But you'll also witness the weaponization of emotional propaganda, which is especially the local news in a lot of cities does this a lot, where they cherry pick some case and say that, hey, this father of four that's been in the country for 20 years has been detained by ICE. This person was a military veteran or something. Kilmar Abrego Garcia is obviously the most famous nationwide example of this, but it's far from the only one, where they will never get specific, right? They'll tell you his whole life story. They'll explain how aggrieved the family is, but never give the actual reason or justification as to why this person was detained, why ICE is considering them for deportation, why maybe sometimes it's going through a court or whatever. And needless to say, this is exactly how they play the game, except Tom Homan is frankly too smart and too experienced on this issue to deal with that. So that basically sums up the intro. Let's just get into this. It's a pretty entertaining interview, and I did some research on some of the things that Mika claims is happening here, and I'm frankly very confused because she won't specify. Obviously, you notice they never specify, hey, this person who got deported, okay, what are the actual details of the case? No, this person is a good person. That's all we have to say about it. So let's get into it. First, though, guys, as usual, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. We're close to 500K. Help us get there. Hit that red button. And with that said, all right, simple enough. Here is Tom Homan appearing on Morning Joe. And, well, let's get into it.
Mr. Homan, how would you define a criminal? And I'm curious, is a person who is living in this country, paying taxes, has a license, has a job, and has kids serving in the U.S. military, but is still in the process of getting legal papers. Is that person a criminal?
Look, every case is different, but when I'm talking
I'm asking about that case.
No,
because there's been that case.
No, they're not, from what you just told me, they're not a public safety threat. However, if they're in the country illegally, that is not okay either. So should that person be put in a car, like surrounded by ICE agents wearing masks and dragged into a car and detained? I don't know the specifics of that case, but let me say this.
That seems to be the answer for any case that has happened that you don't want to talk about. Because there are cases across the country where people who are paying taxes, who have licenses, who are in the process of trying to get legal papers, are they criminals?
Okay, first of all, in the process of getting legal papers, that means they don't have legal papers. They're paying taxes? Well, how would they be doing that? Using fake social security numbers? According to you, they don't have legal status or legal documentation in this country, so the IRS would not be issuing that, right? Oh, but they have kids. Okay. You know, a lot of criminals do have families. Does that mean that they shouldn't go to jail? That they shouldn't receive the consequences of their actions? Notice what she's doing here, right? Acting very emotional. This is so sad. This is so bad. But as you'll see, when Tom Homan asks her to provide the specifics, she can't do it. She's going to screech and cry. And look at her face. I mean, that sums it up. All right.
Especially those who have kids who have served in the U.S. military. And no, they're not a public safety hazard.
Are you going to let me answer?
Wait. So the kids have served in the U.S. military? I thought you said he served in the U.S. military. Now I'm even more confused. She doesn't even know what she's talking about, right? She probably saw this on Facebook or something and is like, no.
Question?
Yes, sir.
I don't know the facts of that case. I don't know what you're talking about. I have to look at the facts of the case. However, I will say this. If they're in the country illegally, that is not okay. And people think illegal immigration is a victimless crime, and it's not. I don't know the case. I don't know the public safety threat. But I will say this. There are millions of people standing in line, taking their tests, doing the background investigation, paying the fees to be part of the greatest nation on earth. And the people who are doing things the right way are sitting on the back seat while we had millions of people come across the border in the Biden administration and cheated the system. People can call them asylum seekers all they want, but if you look at immigration court data, nearly 9 out of 10 people who claim asylum at the border under Biden end up with an order of removal because they don't qualify for asylum. They're pushing themselves to the front of the line, and there are thousands of people in the world who actually are escaping fear and persecution from their homeland. They're sitting in the back seat while people violate laws, disrespected this nation. If you want to be a part of the greatest nation on earth, there's a right way and wrong way to do it. So if you're in the country illegally, you may not be a priority because we prioritize public safety threats and national security threats, but it's not okay to be in this country illegally.
Okay, so is it fair to say that if someone is in the process of trying to get their paperwork straight and they have kids who have served in the U.S. military and they're paying taxes and they have a license, is it fair to say that that person is not a threat to society and not a criminal?
Do they have a criminal history? Have you seen the intelligence? Do you have a?
I'm just asking. Do you consider someone who is trying to get their papers now, struggling, and has kids who serve in the military, has a license and pay taxes? Is that in your mind a criminal? Is that someone you want your ICE agents to take off the street?
I just explained the real data that I see every day. That a mass 70% are criminals, public safety threats. And the rest are national security threats. People with fine orders. I don't know who this case. Do they have a final order? Have you seen the background investigation or the investigation that was built upon by the ICE agent? What's involved in that case? Things you may not know. So unless I know the specifics of that case and I have the file in front of me, I can't make that determination.
Well,
if they're a threat
I would like to see that data that you're talking about, the 70%, the criminal history. I'd love some transparency as to why a lot of these people have been disappeared. You say you have data. We would love to see it. The American people should see this data.
I would like you to provide the name of who you're actually talking about. Because, you search for some of these stories. Because I was trying to figure out, okay, what case particularly is she describing? It's very unclear because first, I believe she said that the person himself was in the military, and now she's saying it's the kids. Maybe I misheard her, whatever. But, you've seen cases, for instance, where top headline here. So this guy, yes, he did serve in the military, but the very reason why he was detained here and arrested and is now facing charges, by the way, is because he's facing federal conspiracy charges after he staged a quote-unquote anti-ICE protest that turned into a riot and saw 11 other people arrested. So is that the individual here that you're talking about? You have this other one where someone is being detained and processed because they have criminal charges against them. This Army veteran and U.S. citizen was arrested in California because of the fact that he was trying to leave, right? So this was actually the case where the ICE raided the marijuana farm. And he was trying to flee the scene. So ICE thought he was an illegal alien. They said, can you roll down your window? Can you get out of the car? They wouldn't do it. They smashed the window. They dragged him out, right? And he was a U.S. citizen. But he refused to just cooperate and, show them the proof he's a U.S. citizen, so they detained him. They figured out he's a U.S. citizen, so he fled. But now what are they describing it as, right? Army veteran and U.S. citizen arrested in California immigration raid, and he's warning it could happen to anyone. Yeah, well, U.S. law, actually, as we read for you, I believe it was yesterday, does state that if immigration authorities either know or believe someone is an alien, they can ask you for proper documentation. So if you're in a situation where they think you might not be a non-citizen, it's very simple. Just give them the documentation to go on your way, but they don't do that. And then they're crying victim, right? This guy resisted basically law enforcement and is saying now that, it can happen to everyone, right? Is this the individual we're talking about? The father of 3 Marines was beaten by ICE agents after he allegedly assaulted them with a weed whacker. That is the story. So this might be who Mika's talking about, right? The very reason is because he's trying to attack ICE with a weed whacker, according to DHS accusations here. So, he never had a criminal history. Well, that might change very soon. I don't know, right? Wife says Army vet wrongfully detained by ICE. DHS claims extensive criminal history, right? So notice how every single time, as I said, both local and national news will make this big fear-mongering headline about how, this family man, this innocent person detained by ICE. Let's not give the details. Let's not actually explain for you why that happened. Many such cases. It's the same thing, frankly, with police brutality. You might notice that the left has a common trend here where they just scream about a headline, they don't get specific, and then Mika's going to go out there and get emotional. Imagine being married to her, by the way, Joe Scarborough. I don't know how you do it, but all right, let's keep listening.
Well, here's the rhetoric again, right? You just disappeared. That is a ridiculous thing to say.
Why?
Because ICE is doing the same thing we've done for decades. But because of the last 4 years, ICE wasn't allowed to enforce the law. ICE was told to sit back, and you can't arrest an illegal alien for simply being here legally. You got to wait till they commit a serious crime and get convicted of that crime. That's what Secretary Mayorkas' instructions were. And that's why you saw there's so much crime in this country coming from the illegal alien population, because there's no law enforcement. But we're doing the same thing right now that we did when I started back in 1984. ICE agents are enforcing the laws enacted by Congress. They're appropriated funding to enforce these laws. If you don't like what ICE is doing, then go protest Congress. However, to say we disappeared people, no. We're arresting people that are in the country illegally and are a public safety threat. We know exactly who we're going to arrest when we go look for them. We have a case file in front of us. We have all those facts. This is not disappearing people. This is a planned, targeted enforcement operation that we're doing. And comments like you just made is one of the reasons why these men and women are under threat every day. Not just the men and women in ICE, but their spouses and their children. They're not disappearing people. They're enforcing the law. And the data proves that 70% of these people are criminals.
Could we see that data?
Absolutely. I have no problem sharing any data from it. I read it every morning.
Well, can you share it with the rest of America?
Yeah, we certainly would like to, sir.
Oh, we have. You guys don't cover it. Other thing I'd like to point out about this case, again, if this is what she is talking about, the father of U.S. Marines got detained. So let's get this straight. So I'm assuming the U.S. Marines are U.S. citizens. They were probably born in the United States. They have to be over the age of 18. I'm guessing varying cases. So probably the oldest one is what? Maybe 25 at least, maybe even older than that. Okay. So let's get this straight. This guy came to the country probably 2, maybe almost 3 decades ago, illegally speaking, obviously. Never once, through even previous administrations who might have been more lenient on this issue, tried to bother to get, say, legal status, to apply to be here okay. Only now in 2025, after his kids are all grown and they're in the U.S. military, like decades later, finally, he's saying, let me try to get my papers, and then going to scream the victim when that doesn't happen, right? It's like there's a lot of these cases where these people clearly just have a serious disregard for actually wanting to follow the system correctly. And it's interesting, they always say, you're paying taxes, you're working jobs, you have a driver's license, you're, doing the civil part of society. But no, actually the opposite is true. That is a flagrant disregard for our rules. Okay, it is enough to come illegally anyway. But you can say, that was 20 years ago. I wasn't thinking. I made a mistake. Okay, so nowhere in the span of the 20 years until 2 days ago, knowing that you're now in a presidential administration that, yes, is tough on immigration, going to be tough on this issue. Again, you had prior chances where maybe the government would have been more lenient. You didn't take them because clearly it was not a priority enough for you to be in this country legally. You just wanted to be in the country. And now you're going to be shocked. Now you're going to cry the victim after your lack of responsibility for over 2 decades has now resulted in the consequence of your actions, which is, oh, wait a minute, you might get deported because you've been in the country illegally for 2 decades. It's insane. And as I so often say, right, if liberals think this is such an issue, right, because they will go out and scream that it's cruel, they've been here so long. Okay, let's remove America from this second. Let's just pick any other country. Let's say you as an American are going to another country. So let's just say Japan, just as an example here, right? And let's say how actually a lot of illegal immigration happened in the past, this part is not talked about enough, is a visa overstay. So you fly over there on tourism, you're allowed to stay 90 days. You're just saying, I'm going to abuse the tourism, I'm going to commit fraud, and I'm just going to stay here, right? So if you get picked up after those 90 days, they find you, you get stopped by the police or whatever, and they say, hey, wait a minute, you overstayed your tourist visa, you're here illegally, and you get deported. Would you scream about that? Would you say that Japan is being unjustly cruel for getting rid of you and sending you back home? I don't think so. I don't think this conversation would happen in any other country, especially a non-Western country, right? Where it's like, oh, how dare they call out the fact that you committed immigration fraud and stayed over your visa, right? Now, let's say for a moment that you overstayed your visa and then you spent 10 years in Japan because they never found you. So those whole 10 years, you are still illegally there, you still committed fraud, and you're just getting away with it. Finally, after 10 years, they find you, and they say, hey, you overstayed your visa for 10 freaking years, which I would argue objectively is like worse than overstaying for 10 days, you know? And they say, you were never supposed to be here, you go back home. What, does that make it cruel at that point? I don't even understand that argument. It's actually worse that you overstayed for a long time. You still did. You're still there illegally. So if you make the argument to the Japanese authorities that, oh, but I've been living here, I'm used to life here because, you didn't catch me for a long time. I don't know. Does that make it any different that you overstayed and you should be deported? Imagine you robbed a bank and committed a bunch of murders and they never found you. But after 10 years, they finally figured out it was you. Or 20 years, or 30 years, however long you've been out there just roaming free. Is it a valid legal argument at that point to say, oh, I never did anything wrong, I can't be accountable? It's a long time ago, don't you know, right? I mean, I remember recent stories where you have, for instance, Nazi war veterans from World War II who are 90 years old and they're finally trying them for war crimes, right? So should those Nazis get out there and say, oh, well, but it was 70 years ago? I mean, that's cruel to enforce it now, right? Or is it the case that you should be held accountable for your actions no matter how long the system of law doesn't catch you? In the end, if they catch you, you have to face the consequences. And we're not even talking about going to jail for 25 years here. We're saying, oh, you broke the immigration system. Okay, you have to be returned to the country where you have citizenship in the country where you're from. It's far, you know what I mean? So anyways, let's hear some of the rest of this and, let's see.
That data and local officials do as well. We also want to get your reaction to this. The Wall Street Journal editorial board reacted to the immigration raid at the Hyundai plant in Georgia that was carried out earlier this week. I'll just read a little bit of it now. The sweeping ICE operation in Georgia illustrates the America First contradiction of demanding foreign investment in the U.S. while shrinking the available workforce. Americans want the law enforced, but raiding legal workplaces isn't going after criminal gangs or murderers. The Georgia raid shows the Trump administration's priority is deporting every illegal migrant, no matter how long they have worked here. This makes every employer a potential target of an ICE raid if the agency suspects foreigners are working there. This is already having a notable impact on the U.S. labor market, as recent monthly jobs reports suggest. It's hard to know, sir. That's the end of that page there. So let's get your reaction to that. I mean, the chilling effect potentially on the American economy, as well as the deportation of people who have been here for years as hardworking employees.
Well, let's break this down. First of all, entering the country legally is a crime. First of all, if you're in the country legally, it's not okay. Knowingly hiring an illegal alien is also a crime. And I said from day one, we're going to do worksite enforcement operations. Let me give you just one example why this is important. And this is a true example. I put a new roof in my house a few years ago. I had to call 5 different companies until I got a company that guaranteed me a legal workforce. And one of the people that showed up was a father and son who at one time employed 20 U.S. citizens in their company. But they couldn't win a bid to replace a roof because they couldn't compare themselves to a company that hired illegal aliens, giving them $5 to get on the roof, where he's paying U.S. citizens $20 to get on the roof. So he lays off 20 U.S. citizen employees because he couldn't compete with illegal alien workforce. That happens every day across this country 1,000 times. So hiring an illegal alien, first of all, no one hires an illegal alien out of the goodness of their heart. They hire because they work them harder, pay them less, and undercut the competition who has U.S. citizen employees. It'll also drive down wages. Just an example I told you, drives down wages overall. So enforcing, one of the reasons people come to this country illegally is to get a job. And that's an enticement and that's a magnet. And I'm telling you, thousands under Joe Biden in 4 years. 4,000 aliens died making that journey. Historic record. People put themselves. Illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. We nation laws. We got to follow those laws.
Mr. Homan, I appreciate what you're saying. I think you did answer my question. I mean, you said that if someone is here illegally, they're a criminal. So I just want to know, what is the data you have beyond that? For example, I was giving you an example of a parent of someone who served in this country. If that person is trying so hard to get their papers straight, especially now, because you're in charge and Trump is in charge and they're going to clean up the border and make this country safe. And
hold on, what is the data you have? Because you didn't provide, you just gave an anecdotal example that you also misrepresented and did not even give the other side of the story. So what's the data that Mika has? By the way, that is such an important point that Tom Homan makes, because it goes right back at the heart of this argument about how, the economy needs illegal immigrants. And the story he personally told is a very common one, which is, no, that is not the case. As a matter of fact, American citizens are being pushed out of the workforce because of migrant labor. And the reasons are very specific and simple. Yes, because you can essentially use illegals as indentured servants, I should say. They're going to work harder, not because, they're just such hardworking people. No, it's because they understand that if they cause problems, if they defy you, they can be deported. So you can work them past the hours. You don't have to pay them overtime. You probably, in some cases, pay them even less than minimum wage. And ultimately, what's happening here is unfair to American workers. American workers, as Tom Homan lays out, want to work these jobs. They can work these jobs. They will work these jobs. And we might do a video later today about the economic statistics and how fake Biden's job growth was. And it'll show you a lot about that, right? There is a need for Americans to work. A lot of Americans are struggling to find work, but they can't do it because in the high-tech sector, H-1B visas are overwhelmingly receiving the jobs. And in the low-tech sector, illegal immigrants are overwhelmingly receiving those jobs. And so this is not even about an issue of, then who's going to fix your house if there's no illegals? There are plenty of Americans who go to trade school and do this type of work. The problem is their life, and it's funny how liberals who claim to care about high wages and good paying jobs and overtime and all this garbage are such big fans of the fact that Americans are being forced into unfair competition by people who, first of all, shouldn't even be here, but secondly, don't even have to follow the same labor laws as everyone else. Even if American citizens will and do work just as hard as illegals, well, guess what, right? Legally speaking, they have to be paid minimum wage. They have to be given, overtime pay, all of this stuff. You cannot compete with someone who's literally just breaking the law. It is that simple. But anyways, guys, you basically get the picture here. Just never should have been a idea for them to come in and try to give Tom Homan a hard time. He is far too educated on this issue. He's lived it, by the way. And all she has is repeatedly going back to this one case of the military father who got detained, right? That's her argument. So anyways, guys, that said, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.